to this celebration of Hispanic heritage and history via a special conversation with our esteemed colleague, Second Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Jose Alberto Cabranes, who joins us from New Haven, Connecticut. My name is Dora Irizarry. I am a district judge, and with me is Magistrate Judge Ramon Reyes. We sit in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York, and we are coming to you from Brooklyn. However, before we begin our conversation, I briefly want to share with you, our audience, some of the highlights of Judge Cabranes' many achievements. In 1994, Jose A. Cabranes became the first Hispanic appointed as a judge of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and only the second Puerto Rican appointed to a United States Court of Appeals. At the time of his appointment, he was Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the District of Connecticut, to which he had been appointed in 1979. He was the first Puerto Rican judge appointed to the federal bench in the continental United States, and the first Hispanic chief judge within the Second Circuit. Judge Cabranes also had the distinction of having been nominated for 2 district court judgeships at the same time, for the Southern District of New York and for the District of Connecticut. Born in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, Judge Cabranes and his family moved to the South Bronx in 1946 when he was 5. We can claim him as a son of the Eastern District of New York, since his family moved to Queens, where he attended public schools. He graduated from Columbia College in 1961 and then taught United States and Puerto Rican history at a high school in Puerto Rico before graduating from Yale Law School in 1965. In 1973, he became special counsel to the governor of Puerto Rico and head of the Washington, D.C. office of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, which later became known as the Puerto Rico Federal Affairs Administration. He was a founding member of the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, now known as Latino Justice PRALDEF. Judge Cabranes, we have some questions for you, and we hope to draw on your experience of observing the history and politics of the Hispanic community in New York over many decades. To begin, what was the situation of the Hispanic community of New York that you and your family encountered when you came in the winter of 1946? This would have been right after World War II.
1946 Hispanics, that has to be explained, especially to those who don't have an understanding of the Hispanic community. In the years after the war, there was no concept of a national Hispanic community. There were clusters of Spanish-speaking people in different parts of the country. But the Puerto Ricans were not numerous at all until immediately after the war, whereupon there was this enormous migration of Puerto Ricans from the island to New York, so that politically and socially, if you spoke of Hispanics and you were talking about New York, you were really talking about Puerto Ricans. So much so that those who were not Puerto Rican themselves would affiliate in various groups. As it were, they were absorbed into in what was the Puerto Rican community, and that was the Hispanic community. So it's not until the 1960s that the Hispanics become visible in the civic and political life of these regions. And what we encountered was a very poor community, because the Puerto Rican community, which was dominant, was extraordinarily poor. It consisted largely of semi-literate, non-literate, not educated country people from the country, and or from the very significant slums of San Juan. The end of the war made possible relatively inexpensive transportation to the States, to the point that by 1946-47, there were 600,000 Puerto Ricans in New York, which is an astounding number. And there was a visible pushback by the general community against the Puerto Rican migration. My father was the head of a settlement house in the Bronx. He had been recruited to run this settlement house, which was a Jewish settlement house, and there were fewer Jews in the vicinity in the South Bronx, East 156th Street. So he was recruited by a professor from Penn who was sent to recruit him, because he was one of the first three. There were three of them who were professional social workers in Puerto Rico. And when this pushback from the general community came, it was very open and categorical. And I have in my files some remnants of the press. It was so bad. One of the pictures that I have in my files is a Puerto Rican community demonstration against the New York World Telegram and Sun. And the article itself is published in the World Telegram and Sun about the picketing outside their offices for a series of articles on what was referred to as the Puerto Rican problem. Now, I have to tell you, this was a well-established reference by perfectly legitimate newspapers, the New York Times, the World Telegram and Sun, the Puerto Rican problem. What are we going to do about this problem? And the problem, in part, consisted of a large number of people living in very bad conditions. First, in what was referred to in the newspapers as Little Spain. Well, Little Spain is what we know of as East Harlem, so-called Spanish Harlem. And these newspapers all carry these pictures of deplorable conditions, and indeed include photographs of flights arriving in New Jersey and New York from Puerto Rico on very inexpensive charters. So in effect, we came into a situation where there was some hostility, and it was quite open. It was Governor Piñera who appointed my father to go from the settlement house to a new office that was established, the Government of Puerto Rico's office in New York, because they needed to have somebody speak for the Puerto Rican government, it was thought. And my father became the first head of that office.